Podcast. My opinion. Podcast. All nine niggas.
Here we go. We are back with another episode of In My Opinion Podcast. We got one of the legends here today, Mr. Joey Medina, owner of Joey Medina Productions, director of Missing the Dirty All-Stars, Cholo Comedy Slam, and again, one of the original Kings of Comedy.
Thank you.
Among many other things that you've done. I do this thing, Joey, because I know we don't really know each other.
Right.
We just do comedy. Don't know if you remember, but I met you probably about 10, 11 years ago. Okay. You had a show in Lodi.
Oh, wow.
My boy, Gabriel Robles was the promoter there. And you guys had a sold-out show. I believe you were the headliner. Mm-hmm. And since day one I met you, you've always been one of the nicest dudes.
Thank you, man.
Which is hard to say in this comedy realm.
Yes. So. Just in the world generally, especially now, man. Right? So, it's like people are just a-holes, man.
Yeah. I don't understand why. But I do this thing where we call this and that. Okay. You've traveled the world. You've seen a lot of places. Mm-hmm. So you just pick one or the other, basically. So I'm going to ask you real simple questions.
Okay, you got it.
I have to ask you this question because I don't know if you noticed, but the shirt says I'm originally from the 915. Right. We're get to that part because that's where you filmed Latin Kings of Comedy.
Yes,
but I have a question about that. But first, I need to know, are you an In-N-Out person or a Whataburger person?
Ooh. Good question. You know what? If I had to pick the two, I would say Whataburger. Only because it's I don't really have them that much. You know, I have maybe one a year. So to me, I'm like, I got to try the Whataburger all the time, man.
You guys heard it here first. Only because I'm a Whataburger fan.
Oh, good. All right.
It's all. I don't even like going to In-N-Out. I tell people the fries are nasty as shit.
Right.
I don't like the fact that they don't give you any other condiments except that nasty secret sauce. I'm not a secret sauce person. Give me some mayo, bro.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you. Are you a green sauce or red sauce enchilada person?
You know what? I would have to say green sauce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I like the green sauce. It's just, except I don't like the super hot greens. If it's super hot green sauce,
You're not a spicy kind of person?
No, I don't like spice so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't like spices. I don't like Spice Girls. I don't like any of that stuff, especially the Spice Girls.
I will say, even though I don't talk to the lady, I'll call her mother, but when it comes to green enchiladas, that's where I go green enchiladas.
Well,
any other time, it's red enchiladas, and I guess it's probably just growing up in El Paso, which is funny because I like red enchiladas there, but being here in California now, I don't know if you noticed the difference, but everybody eats red salsa here.
Yeah.
And then everybody eats green salsa in Texas.
Right.
So when you come out here and you're like, I guess we're having red.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's where it's different. I have to ask you this only because you're an old time boxer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So is it boxing or is it MMA? What's your preferred?
Boxing, 100%. But no, this is the thing. I think it's like apples and oranges. It's two different things completely. And I don't take any credit away from MMA guys. Those guys are tough guys. They train hard. They fight hard. I have nothing against MMA. Zero. It's if I just think boxing for me is more pure. It's harder. I think it's it's more of a chess game. It's more mental and as well as physical, which MMA I think is of course there's a lot of mental, there's a lot of strategy to it. I don't take anything away from those guys. I just think boxing is prettier, and boxing is more of a science.
Okay. I think the hardest thing for me, I grew up doing martial arts and stuff like that, and to not be able to kick someone when they're punching me in the face. So
yeah. But you know how it is, like when you're married, not having to hit someone when you really want to. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I've been through a couple of divorces, so yeah, I know exactly what you mean. All right. Last question, then we'll get into real questions. Last this or that is, Mexican food from California or Mexican food from Texas?
Ooh, good question. Texas and California Mexican food are completely different. The good thing about California Mexican food is it changes up a little bit. You get people from different parts of Mexico, different parts of the United States. So you get different types of food no matter where you go. When you go to Texas, a lot of it, from what I found, is pretty much the Tex-Mex style, right? Which is a completely different thing. But if I would have to pick something, if I had to make a choice, I would say Texas, just because it's a little different. Yeah, and it's a little. It's just, and I like anything that's different. You know, if somebody said, "Hey, you wanna have sex? You wanna do anal or regular?" I'm like, you know what? I haven't done anal in a while. Let's do anal. You know, so it's just like whatever is a little different. That's what I want to do.
Okay. I tell people, again, growing up in El Paso, then moving to California when I was 12, I tell people the biggest difference is Texas food. Everything's in the food. So meaning if you don't want jalapenos, that's your fault. You're eating that shit. They don't care if you're a 2-year-old. They put it in there. Everything here is a condiment. So that's the major difference for me. Is I'm like, oh, you could add it here. Right. I'm like, I just, fuck it. You're not eating it if you don't like it growing up. So that was
because you grew up with it. Like anytime you grow up with something, you take it for granted a little bit. You like the new thing, right? Everybody wants the new thing.
Yeah.
And to me, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of that Texas stuff all the time. So I like the Texas stuff a little more. I love everything about Texas except their politics. But the crowds in Texas are great. The food is great. People are great. I think I had my first threesome in Texas. So
there you go.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Okay, I have to ask this. You're wearing the shirt. It says Bronx Boy.
Yes.
You're originally from the Bronx.
Yes.
What year were you born?
I was born in 65.
65.
Yeah.
Now, I asked that only because one of my favorite genres, I don't know if it's yours, but it's hip hop. The birthplace is the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So was that your childhood? Do you remember growing up, going outside? Like, those are only stories to someone like me, but you probably might have lived through that. People hook up their shit and get down. And
all that was me. I think hip hop first hit, I believe it first hit when I was in late elementary school or early junior high school. And, I remember hearing rap albums and like, oh my God, everybody. And then I tried to rap. Everybody tried to rap. You know what I mean? And it's just, and then when you get older, I got older, go to high school, went to house parties. And you have everybody's DJing, everybody's doing their thing, and some people rapping. And it was really all underground, right? So it was all underground. And, but it was definitely where it started. And it was just, it changed. It came around right when I was changing from a boy to a young man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hip hop is really, really special to me just for that reason.
Okay. Were you a b-boy or anything growing up? Did you try dancing?
Yeah, I tried everything, man, and I wasn't really great at it.
Did you have a favorite artist back then? Was there someone where you're like, man, I remember seeing Melly Mel for the first time?
Well, I remember I actually opened as a comic for Sugar Hill Gang once.
Really?
Yeah, and that was amazing. Like it was. I was living in Arizona. They did a show in Arizona. I opened for them, and it was just kind of coincidence kind of thing. But I remember in my mind going, holy shit, I had that album. I started, I was rapping to that when I was a little kid. And it was just, they were kind of already over the hill a little bit probably by then. But just to be in the same show as them, to me, was incredible. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah, no. I and mind you, if I'm correct, I believe like when that track came out with Sugar Hill Gang, like there was a bunch of blowback in the track in the beginning, and then it got picked up, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's kind of our anthem. That's our theme."
And then I guess, like for instance, they used "Good Times" illegally. They weren't supposed to use that music as a background, so they got sued for that. And then they actually were just 3 local MCs that I forgot her name, but there was a woman that put that group together and called it the Sugar Hill Gang. And then, they became a little, but she owned the name Sugar Hill Gang. She owned the song. She owned all that. Those guys were just like work to hire guys. People don't realize that. It wasn't like they started out as a group.
Because there was originally one writer for the whole song.
Yeah,
right?
So basically they were like the first boy band almost. You know what I mean? They put them together like that just to rap, but they were great. You had a little dude, you had a big heavyset dude, and you had a younger looking, dude, and they all had little stories, and it was just, I think people who lived in urban areas needed that. You know what I mean? So that was, it stuck out. It was fun.
Because New York back then was just grimy, wasn't it? Like, because that was pre-crack era, right?
Oh yeah, and it was, it's funny when you grow up, and I guess that it takes for even people that live in the West Coast. If you grow up in a really bad area or violent area, when you grow up, you don't know anything different. Like you just think that's life, right?
Yeah.
It's like that everywhere until you start traveling. You're like, holy shit! You mean I don't have to hide my jewelry everywhere I go? I don't have to. So it's that kind of thing, and it's when I grew up in the Bronx, and I grew up in the South Bronx, which is the worst part of New York City, and it was like I just thought that was life. I didn't realize that was anything bad, until I left there. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you mean I don't have to like cockroaches?
No. I tell people I've never been to New York myself, but I just feel like if I ever were to go, I probably wouldn't leave. So
yeah, New York is beautiful. Really, it is, man.
I'm a late night person.
Awesome.
I love being around
You love New
people,
York.
congestion. So I don't mind it. So.
Yeah.
So just to see someone and everyone that's from that, like you guys have so much culture too. Like I was in the military, and so you kind of meet everybody from all different different walks of life and from everywhere in the United States. And every other soldier that I was in the military with that was from New Jersey or New York, or I was like, man, you guys like know so much more about the world. Just to begin with, just because I feel like you guys had to grow up faster in that
Yeah,
scene.
it's funny. You learn. You're more. I guess maybe more independent, more street smart, but you're also very naive to other things. I remember one time meeting somebody as a teenager. I met a guy who grew up in the sticks, right? And he kept on going, can I borrow your ink pen? Can I borrow your ink pen? I'm like, dude, why are you calling it an ink pen? We know what it is. It's a pen, right? He goes, no, there's all kinds of pens. There's chicken pens, pig pens, cow pens. I'm like, all right, I guess you got a point, But I didn't have any of that stuff. He had that stuff. So it's just, it's always good when you get people from different cultures or different parts of the country or different parts of the world where they intermix and kind of teach each other. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I love about our job being a comedian. You get to travel and you get to see things from all different cultures and all different worlds and appreciate it. And I think if we had more of that, there would be less violence in the world. There'd be less racism in the world, less homophobia in the world, because when you get to realize, hey, all those people that are different are just like you, really, you chill out. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about diversity, let's go to one of the most diverse cities in the world, El Paso, right? I say that sarcastically, people. I only bring up El Paso. Again, I'm wearing a shirt. That's my hometown. You guys filmed a Latin Kings of Comedy there.
Right.
I wanted to know, was that one night filming or was that
2 nights?
That was 2 nights and then you guys edited that way? And then was the lineup... That's a good question that I like to ask people was the lineup the way it was shot as well? Or
That's a great question, right? So basically, the show consisted of Paul Rodriguez, George Lopez, myself, Alex Raimundo, Marilyn Martinez, and another female, I can't remember right now. And Alex Raimundo and I shot 2 episodes, and the girls shot 2 episodes. And at the time, it wasn't called the original Latin Kings of Comedy. People of Paramount Pictures owns the original whatever of comedy. They own it.
okay.
So they came to the show because we wanted it to be that. and they liked it. They liked the show, they liked the production, and they booked it. And then the way it was going to be was whoever had between Alex Raimundo, myself, Marilyn Martinez, and the other person, the best two sets got to go on. It got to stay on. And Alex and Raimundo and I both had the best sets, and compared to the other girls. And,
so you went into it not knowing if you were going to be part of this?
No. Yeah, I didn't know.
Because I was going to say, I just watched it this morning again, and I was that's the way you open the show.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know.
But then again, I was like, I wonder if he opened the show. You know what I mean? Because I've heard from other people when they were part of a cast like that, they're like, I shot actually third, and then they edited it first.
Because a lot of times what they want to do is they want to put a lot of energy in the beginning to wake everybody up and to do that.
Yeah.
That's the reason I guess I was up. But it didn't matter to me. I just knew I was gonna have a good set, and hopefully, and I was just concentrating on that and just concentrating on making the crowds laugh. But we were there for a whole week. We did all kinds of press. We did. Matter of fact, Cheech Marin had his birthday during that week, so we celebrated, and he was great to hang out with. And and I'm not saying this because you're here or people listening. The people of El Paso are freaking dope. I mean, they really are.
They can be.
El Paso, it's its own part of Texas. Like it's its own. It is to Texas what Texas is to the United States, right? It's its own little thing, and its own little colony, kind of. And so I love Texas. I love El Paso especially. El Paso is my favorite city in Texas. I love to work there anytime I can. And when we did Lion Kings of Comedy there, man, it was great. We were there for a whole week. We went to a children's hospital. Most of us, we all went to a children's hospital to talk to the kids, to cheer them up, and we all took turns going to the bathroom to cry, because it was hard, man, watching these little poor kids, shaved heads, IVs, walking around and trying to make them laugh. It just, I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm very empathetic, and I have a lot of sympathy, and I'm very sensitive, and when I see stuff like that, it just kills me, That's why, like, now that I'm older, I don't even watch. When I see there's a blur on a video on Instagram and it says, press it to clear it, I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to see it. It's probably some animal getting hurt or person getting hurt. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to see any of that. I know it exists, but I don't. This world is bad enough where you turn on the news and you get depressed, So it's like, now I just. Like, I'm cool. I don't want to.
I need to learn that from you.
Remember when we were kids, we all loved watching, Faces of Death?
Yeah.
I love it. Man, I can't wait. Now I couldn't watch it. I don't want to.
I still watch stuff like that. And I told someone yesterday, I was like, man, I feel like we're going to have World War III sometime soon because that's all I ever watch on my TikToks.
Exactly.
Right?
Man.
Where
and it's hard,
step away
man.
from that.
Yeah, I don't want to. I try to stay away from it because it's just too negative. And I'm just like, I don't want to. I don't want to deal with it.
Oh, okay. Well, great advice. Advice. I also had Steve Trevino on this podcast, and he was, if I can remember correctly, he was telling me how the Three Amigos was supposed to be shot differently as well, and then a couple of people didn't get along, and then that's what made Latin Kings of Comedy, and then Three Amigos.
Right.
Do you know anything about that as well? Is that why certain people got picked for Latin Kings of Comedy?
From what I understand.
And again, this isn't just
I'm just
because comics want to know.
Yeah, I'm just giving.
That was the first time I ever heard of that, where I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
From what I remember, Carlos Mencia was supposed to be on it, and from again what I think happened. This is what I remember happening. Whether it happened or not, I don't know. But I remember hearing this. Is I guess Carlos was on doing a radio show somewhere in Fresno or somewhere. I don't remember what it was, and he was talking negative about Paul Rodriguez. And at the time, Paul Rodriguez was pulling the strings. It wasn't George Lopez. It was Paul Rodriguez, right? And he was the bigger act. And then Paul heard it and then decided to keep him out of it. And, well, we don't need him on the show if he's negative.
Oh.
I believe, again, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I remember hearing.
Okay.
And then we went
I think Steve had mentioned something to the fact that it all circled around Carlos.
Yeah.
And that was the reason
and
why.
It was, at that time, Steve was hanging out with Carlos all the time. Like they were together a lot.
Yeah, and he said because Carlos was the first person to take him on the road and do stuff, and then he was a writer on the Mind of Mencia.
Because one time I remember somehow I was at the gym and I get a call from Steve, and he was with Carlos, and this was when Carlos was doing his show. And he go, "Hey man, we heard a rumor that you were talking smack about Carlos on the radio." I'm like, "What?" Now my thing, anybody that knows me knows my policy. I will never talk negative about any other comic in public. Not on a podcast, on a TV, radio, not in ever. Out amongst my friends, I go, "Yeah, I don't like this. I'm like, yeah, this guy's a jerk. This guy," but I'll never ever do it in public. So right away, I knew he was wrong. Right? I go, "Dude, that's never happened." And then he told me what city it was, or what station it was, and I was like, I've never even been there. Either the city or the radio show, whatever it was, I've never even been there.
Yeah.
So I go, "Bro," and if Carlos has something to bring up to me, tell him to bring up to me. And then he came on the phone and he goes, "Ba, ba, 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 ba." Not bad, but I go, "Dude, no." I go, "I've never been on that station or that city, whatever it was." And I go, I go, "That's not my policy. I do not talk smack because I don't want, it makes you look bad, I think."
Yeah.
And it just shows hard feelings. And I think we have enough problems in the comedy community, in the Latino community. We don't need to shit on each other in public. So I know I haven't done it. So whatever he heard, I'm sure he might have heard that, but it wasn't true.
No, and to be honest, again, your name never even got brought up at all. I was just, and the reason I brought it up to Steve, because I didn't know Steve had anything to do with Three Amigos neither, or was around, or any of that. I brought it up because Freddie Soto is from El Paso, and I was all, Freddie, may he rest in peace. I was all, I remember catching him on Comedy Central, and I was like, this dude is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And that's been my thing that I've been trying to chase since I started comedy, where I'm like, as soon as I get to where Freddie was, I know I've made it. So, and anybody that worked with Freddie was like, hey, Freddie was a sweetheart, Freddie was this, Freddie was that, but never anything bad, right? And to go to your point, that's why this podcast is special to me. So thank you for being here, is because I feel like Latin comics don't help out Latin comics like the way that I see like black comics help out black comics, or white comics.
I agree with you.
And it's so upsetting because we have a lot of comics that are fire right now, that are doing things where, Ken Flores is doing his thing, Ralph Barbosa is doing his thing. There's a lot of comics, Renee Vodka. There's a lot of comics where you're like, dude, if we just helped each other out and did something, we have numbers, bro. Like, we'd be selling our own tickets without having
I agree 100%, and I've been saying the same thing for decades, and it's
where out of everybody, I tell people, besides you and Steve Trevino, I haven't had, like all my other comic friends that I've done comedy with in my area, in my scene, have come on and done stuff. But anybody else I've asked, and they're like, where I tell people I've asked D.L. Hughley, and he's like, yeah, baby boy, come by tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm like, I expected to know.
Right.
I was like, that's fucking D.L. Hughley. Like, so just comedy community, if you hear me, man, like, we should be helping each other out, because this
100%.
is already a hard enough grind.
Yeah,
I tell people.
Look, this is the thing. This promotes us as individuals. It helps you promote your platform. You know what I mean? And one of the beautiful things about podcasts is you get to hear that comic, the real inside of that comic, right? What they think, what they feel, stories, stuff that you're bringing up and we're fixing right now, going, okay, no, it happened this way, not that way, whatever. And you get to know more about the comics you like. And like you said, the Latin comedy has not been better since I've started comedy than it is now. And one of the reasons why is we got so many Latin comics now. And Latin comics now are not looked at as Latin comics. Like, the only time we could work ever was on a Latino night. That's the only time we could work. And every joke had to be about tortillas or your mom or quinceañera or, some shit like that. Now it doesn't have to be. Now we talk about all the same shit everybody else talks to, except because we are Latino, we have a little more, and Latina, there's many great female Latina comics,
Yeah.
and you know, we look at it from a different perspective. That's the beautiful thing about comedians. We look at life from a different perspective than other people. And if you're Latin, it's okay because we're looking at it from a different vibe. We come across on stage differently. Our material is different. But yet, you know, a good comic will make a joke relatable to everyone, you know, and not
Correct.
just Latinos, not just this, not just that. And I like that. You know, who else? Jerry Garcia's out there. He's doing all these jokes about being a stepdad, and they're hilarious. And it doesn't. You don't got to be a Latino to get these jokes. You don't even have to be a stepdad to get these jokes. You just have to get it and go, oh yeah, these are all the different, you know, advantages and disadvantages of being a stepfather. And that's you know, a great vibe to go from.
And so, have you seen that change within starting comedy when you did to now, where you're like, oh, I'm glad that we're not? Because I tell people, like, I'm working on a joke right now, because I tell people, when you look like this and you don't speak Spanish, like, I get hate, bro. Like,
It's like wearing a red shirt at Target. You're like, oh, what? I thought you belonged here. What happened?
yeah. So, you know, I'm working on the joke where my girl's Filipina, and I go, I thought our differences was because she's Filipina and I'm Mexican. And I go, no, I figured it's because she's first generation. And I go, and I know white people, you're looking at me. Well, what generation are you? And I'm like, well, I was born here. My parents were born here. My parents was born here. And before that, Texas was Mexico, motherfuckers. Read a book, right? So it's kind of that way where when you say it, I like seeing my audience's faces change, and they're like, oh yeah, we didn't realize that you could. So I say, then I go into different generational things where, like I said when we eat chicken, I stop at the bone. I said, my girl, she sucks out the marrow, eats the cartilage. I'm like, babe, we got 9 more wings to go. Like, slow down. So it's just certain things like that where I'm like, I don't really care. I'm too American, but I'm not American enough. It's that Selena quote, right? Like, where I got to be more Mexican than Mexican. I got to be more American than American.
Yeah. So
shit.
you know, things like, and you're absolutely right. And all like, you know, with that, the only remark I have is, and this to everyone, just be you. Be you. If you tend to be a brown, dark person, but is extremely more American than you are Latino, then that's okay. That's not bad, right? It's if you're gay, if you're a gay man, but you're not flamboyant at all, and you like football, and you wear your hat backwards, and you drink beer, that's boring. But it's okay. You know, it's okay. Just be you. Don't, you know, and if you're really flamboyant, that's even more fun. But just be you, you know, and us as people, let's accept people for who they are and move on. It's okay. We don't need to judge. We don't need to talk smack behind their back. We don't need to look, man. As long as I tell people this, I tell people on stage this when I talk about religion, I go, whether you're Catholic, a Muslim, a Jew, Jehovah's Witness, or an atheist, whatever makes you be a good person, keep doing that. Keep doing that one. That's the one for you. Don't try nothing else. Fuck what everybody else says. If you're an atheist and you're a good person, then be an atheist and be the best atheist you can be. Right? Just don't be a dick.
Yeah. I tell people that I used to live here. That's why I have a 562 area code number, and used to live in Artesia.
Right.
And it wasn't, I have a tattoo across my back that says, to live is to suffer. And a friend was visiting me, and he goes, man, I didn't know you were a Buddhist. And I was all, I'm not. What are you talking about? Right. And he goes, yeah, you got the first noble principle across your back. And I was like, oh, really? So I looked into it. One of the biggest Buddhist temples is out here in Hacienda Heights.
Right.
Never been there. You got to check it out. Right?
Oh, wow. Nice.
And they offer classes, or they did back then on Saturday, where all the local universities out there, they'll teach you about Buddhism, right? And that's where I went out, and I tell people now, I was that's the first church, especially growing up Catholic, where when I sat down, they were like, hey, if you're Catholic, we'll make you a better Catholic. If you're Jewish, we'll make you a better Jew. Hey, and I was like, man, I never heard that shit growing up in a Catholic church. And I was like, this I can kind of dig. So when it comes to that philosophy, I'm with you on that, where there's so much bad shit in the world. Can we focus on some
Yeah,
positivity?
exactly.
So,
There's a book called, I've read it, but a while ago. I can't remember the exact title. I think it's called like living, or it's like Buddha, like Jesus, or like Christ, like Buddha, something like that, where it combines, or not combines, but it compares Christianity to Buddhism, and how many of the things are similar, very similar. And it's a really good book. And it's and the thing is this, guys, you don't have to be a religious freak to be a good person, and you don't have to be a religious crazy nut to be spiritual. You know what I mean? A lot of the stuff in the Bible that I believe in is stuff that's just good teachings. Don't be a dick, basically.
don't be a dick.
I'm not quoting it correctly, but don't be a dick. That's a lot of what the Bible is. When it talks about all crazy other stuff, then I'm like, I'll pass on that. But yeah, don't be a dick. Be good to people. Be humble. Be sweet. Be kind. Kindness is a religion, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And I want that to be my religion. I want to be kind. I want to be kind even when it's inconvenient. You know, if you're late to go somewhere and you're driving and you see some poor little old lady with 2 shopping bags walking up a hill, don't be a dick. Pull over and offer a ride. The world we live in now, she may say no, rightfully so, but offer her the ride. Offer her the ride. You know what? Yeah, it's inconvenient. You're going to be late. But this poor lady is walking her, taking her little groceries, walking her ass up. Who knows what's going to happen? She's going to be tired, mugged, whatever. Be kind. That's all. Just be kind.
Okay. To go back to the Latin Kings of Comedy, I did want to ask you, out of everybody that was on that special, I know you still work with Paul now. Mm-hmm. Are you in contact with everybody else?
I only see George Lopez on occasion when I see him. He's never been mean to me or anything. He's always been nice. Same thing with Cheech. I see Cheech when I happen to run into him. And pretty much everybody else like that, except for Paul. I work with Paul lately more than I do with the other guys. So, and
how did that come about? How did you guys reconnect and start?
Well, we've always stayed in contact. We always people want to see Latin Kings again. Every once in a while, it'll be him and I, or him and I and Alex Raimundo.
Oh, really?
And then and we'll do a show, and the numbers are good. People still like it, and the beautiful thing is all the material is new, so it's not like people. But it's funny, even though that thing happened 20 years ago, someone will yell out, "Yeah, do this joke or do that joke," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Now then I got to try to remember it, because I haven't done it in years,
Oh, that's cool that you guys have stayed connected that long.
Yeah.
Where I got to open for Paul a New Year's Eve probably about 9 years ago or so.
Nice.
In Stockton. They had him out in Stockton at the Bob Hope Theater, and it was cool. It was like, oh man, where anybody else that I told my mom I was working with, she'd be like, oh, okay, that's nice. But when I told her Paul, she was like, oh man, I might fly out there. Where I was like, oh, now you want to come see me do comedy.
Paul is
right.
Paul is a living. He literally is a living legend.
No.
And Paul is hilarious. Paul has always been funny. I learned a lot from working with him. I really have. He's always been generous. He's always been kind to me. He's always been helpful. Matter of fact, I have a script that I want to shoot with Paul, and Paul is dying to do it. It just, one of the cast members is a dog, and we just have to find the right dog for it. But other than that, it's a great story, and Paul's a really good actor. Paul can do drama, and this is a dramatic script, and I can't wait to watch him, work, and watch people look at him do some really heavy dramatic roles.
It's been a while since he's been in a movie or TV, though, right?
Yeah, well, he's been doing some independent stuff.
Oh, okay.
But nothing
that's right. I think
that really, people take comics for granted. They don't think we're great actors necessarily. They don't think we're great filmmakers. They just think everything we're comics first and then everything else after. But they don't realize that, I've won over 250 awards for my projects, and that's like, I'm doing something right. It's not because I'm a comedian. It's because I'm a good filmmaker. I'm a good director. I'm a good writer. I'm a good producer. And but people don't see it like that. They go, "Oh, he's a comic." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Definitely. And we're going to touch in some of your film stuff in a minute. But I did want to address the fact that again, how people don't think that we do different things or know people, and the way that it's all connected is weird too. Because like I bring up Paul because my cousin does all my artwork. The cousin that got me this spot to film in. That's part of this thing going on today. And he hit me up and he's all, man, you don't know who I'm drawing for this week. And I was like, who? He's all, Paul Rodriguez Jr. So he
the son.
Yeah. So he got together and they did some skating event or whatever. And I know my cousin was just super psyched. Where he was like, that was cool. So I just wanted to throw that out there only because my cousin does so much for me behind the scenes where I appreciate that.
Right.
Which will lead me into the filmmaking stuff. Behind the scenes, again, I didn't know that you were behind the scenes as much as you were. So how did you get into that? Is that your focal point now, or is that just something like a passion?
It's a passion and it's something else. I mean, it's. I'm focusing on filmmaking more now than I ever have. But filmmaking actually was the first thing I've done before even comedy. And people don't know that because they didn't see it, right? Because it wasn't really popular back then. But it's like, I right after high school, I went to school for television production. I always wanted to be a filmmaker, yeah. So I would do little projects here and there, but that was it. And then in the last few years, I said, screw it, I'm going to focus. So I put my money where my mouth is. I bought equipment and I focused it on more. I started a production company. I started doing my own projects, and because I was tired of waiting for someone to believe in me to give me a project to do. So I go, I'm just going to make my own projects.
What's your biggest project that people might not know that you were attached to?
You mean making it?
Making it or just being a part of? Sometimes, because again, I kind of see that where that's how I ended up purchasing all my own equipment and doing my own thing because, again, you're like, well, when am I going to get invited on somebody's podcast? And then this has turned into, I tell people, this is the part of comedy where you nowadays it's not just comedy. You got to find a different outlet and to be part of the public scene. So this helps me do that. So I'm just interested in how you got to that point where you're like, man, I got to do all this and the project that you was part of.
Well, I mean, as far as being behind the scenes, I started directing. The first thing I directed was a movie, a full feature film. And in that film, Gabriel Iglesias was in it, Paul Rodriguez was in it, Alex Raimundo was in it, Emilio Rivera was in it, Martin Moreno was in it, Brad Williams was in it, a bunch of comics.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I directed, and which won 3 awards at one film festival it was in. And then, but then, I focused a lot on comedy. But then, little by little, I wanted to keep doing more and more filmmaking. So I started doing music videos. I did doing a couple sketches. And then I started doing short films. When I started doing short films, I really found my niche because I got to make movies. Because to make a film is really expensive and difficult. Making a short film is the exact same effort, but it's less. So instead of shooting for 2 weeks to a month, you're shooting 1 day to 3 days. So when you're shooting 1 day to 3 days, it's cheaper. It's if you don't have money to pay people, right? It's easy to ask for a favor. Hey man, could you do me a favor and act in this thing for 1 day? Yeah, no problem. But to get them to do it for a month or weeks, that's hard, man. Because after the first few times, they're like, all right, the fun's over. They're like, hey, man, I can't make it. I got to go something else. I got to go pick up somebody at the airport. I got to go have an audition. And then you start screwing up and you can't do the production correctly. But a short film is great to do. That's why, they call me the king of short films. Some people call me that because I've been doing a lot of short films lately. Okay. But the only reason I do short films is because I could afford to pay for them. Okay. I can afford to do it myself.
Have you shot anybody's comedy special?
Yeah. I shot. I did Bad Boys. What was it? Dirty at 12:30 comedy special. I did that. I did Cholo Comedy Slam.
Oh yeah, that's right. I brought that up.
Yeah, I did Latin Palooza.
Yeah.
And then I did.
What'd you learn from that? Only because I'm asking because I was trying to film my own, but unfortunately it didn't happen this past summer. And even while I was getting ready, I realized I was like lighting, sound, and like just everything has to be on point. And then to your point is when you don't get it right, who can afford to pay for it to do the whole production again? You're like, oh my god,
it's hard.
So,
This is the thing. It's a lot. It's very different than doing film or whatever, because you're doing two things at once. You're doing a live production. You're promoting a live show. You can't get away with it. That's what you're doing. And now you're shooting and producing that live show. So two different things. So you have to be the leader of like the party, and you have to be the cook. You know what I mean? So yeah, I learned that it's really hard to do both, and it's very, and
especially if you're worried about ticket sales too, right?
yeah, 'cause you have to worry about ticket sales, you have to worry about this, you have to worry about that, you have to worry about every artist has their own little issue. You got to worry about all that. Then you got to worry about the cameras, and you got to worry about what kind of cameras, what the equipment, there's all of this stuff you got to worry about, and I love it. I love doing it, but it's hard work. It's to me, and it's a combination of filmmaking and comedy, because kind of, so you two things I love is together. So that's why I don't mind it, because I like it. Yeah. I know how to put on a good show, and I know how to produce something and direct.
Would you
something.
consider producing your own next comedy special?
If I do a comedy special, I'm producing my own. Yeah.
And if you do that, where would you release it? Would you want it on Netflix, or would you want to do
I would want to first.
Because I feel like a lot of new comics are starting to, and I can't say new comics, but a lot of comics have chosen to go the YouTube route.
They go to YouTube route because nobody else is buying the stuff. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? So it's like they go to YouTube because they don't have an offer from Netflix or HBO or Showtime. Like I had a comedy special. I didn't direct it. It was on but it was on Showtime. So if I had a comedy special, I would shoot it, right? And depending on how the quality, I would try to sell it to different places. And depending on who buys it, they buy it. So I don't know, you know what I mean? But I'm sure one of the good things about YouTube, though, however, is everyone has access to YouTube for free. Not everybody has access to Netflix. Not everybody has access to, all the other streaming networks.
And I think everybody's argument that they're putting it on YouTube right now is, or I can't say everyone's argument, but most of the people that I've talked to is because they've already monetized their own channel. Mm-hmm. So one, they get to keep the rights, and then they get paid for it through the YouTube channel or whatever. Because I didn't realize when I was talking to like Jason Banks, who's blown up on TikTok, he was like, if I didn't release it on YouTube,
Jason Briggs?
Jason Banks.
Okay, Banks. Sorry.
He was talking about how if, like, let's say Netflix paid him to do a special there, he goes, I'm not allowed to put it on my social media, or if I am, it gets flagged because technically I'm not the owner no more, so I can't get paid off of my own comedy.
Right.
And he goes, so that's why me and my agent decided to go that route. And I was I guess I didn't even think about that. Because, again, there's little things in the background that comics didn't know. Even when I was wanting to shoot my special, I wanted to do it at a comic club. And it wasn't until I talked to Tony Roberts' manager, and she was like, no, because then you have to give the comedy club rights and a percentage of everything, too.
Not necessarily.
Where I was like, really? Like, I was like, well, 10% of zero is still going to be zero.
Yeah, not necessarily. It's what deals. You don't have to. You do need to have a release from them. So a release saying you can shoot at my property. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you don't have to give anybody anything. It's whatever the contract is. I mean, one of the advantages of being on YouTube or like Louis C.K., he does his specials. He directs them, produces them, does them all. Yeah. And he only sells them. You could only see it on his website. You got to pay $5.
Yeah.
You go on his website and you see it. That's one way to do it. And the good thing about somebody like Louis C.K. is he has an audience.
Yeah.
His audience is going to find them, right? What happens with a lot of comics who have specials is they don't really have an audience yet. They have very few, their family, their friends, and maybe a handful of fans, but that's it. And people tend to it's on YouTube, so it can't be that good. They think it's just from an iPhone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't know, they go, "Oh, it's comedy special." Yeah, they did it with an iPhone at a bar. They don't expect good quality. So that's one of the disadvantages. So it's just like any production. You got to look at the advantages and look at the disadvantages. If the biggest obstacle is money, shooting it and whatever, or finding somebody, then biggest obstacle, like nobody wants to buy it. Then I guess YouTube is your answer, and just milk it, make it do better. But you have to make good quality stuff so people can see it. So you take that special, that YouTube special, and you take clips from it and promote it on Instagram, promote it on TikTok, promote it on different venues or different streaming networks, because now they go, "Oh, this is good quality. I'll watch it on YouTube. This is a special. It's a real special." You know what I mean? And you can do something like, "Hey, listen, man, for the first month, you have to pay, or for the first month it's free, and then charge afterwards." Like this, you can get creative. You can do different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Is that why you ended up landing in? Because I'm assuming you live here in LA area now, right? So is that why you're in this area now? Because you're like, well, this is kind of home base for filmmaking, TV.
No, not at all. I did it for comedy. I came to LA for comedy.
Oh,
But it helps being a filmmaker and being in LA, because you're always going to have crew. You're always going to have actors. You're always going to have people that you can work with. Even if you don't, I try to work with the same people over and over again, because we already know each other. We already have a vibe. We trust one another. You know what I mean? It's like having a team, and that's really what it is. But every once in a while, I'll have a new sound guy, because my sound guy is busy making real money, right? Or I'll have a new this person or that person. I'll work with an actor I've never worked with before. So as a director, then I try to figure out how do I work with this actor? Maybe if the role is real specific, or I may have an issue with this actor or worry or concern, I'll take him to lunch and we'll talk. We'll talk about the role. We'll talk about how I like directing, how they like being directed. And if at that point I feel we don't have a connection, then we'll cut ties. But hopefully that point brings us closer, not further. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, definitely. We'll continue that conversation off camera, because there's a couple ideas that I want to, bounce off of you when it comes to filmmaking. But while I got you here, I won't keep you much longer. Where do you see yourself in comedy 5-10 years from now? Because it sounds to me like you haven't lost the love for this.
No, I love comedy, and I always have. Like, I literally, if I won $1 billion, I'm still gonna do stand up. I'll probably just buy the club though, but I'll still stand up. Right? Hopefully, I don't know. I see my film career doing better, a lot better, but comedy is a kind of a weird business, A good example, Willie Barcena. Willie Barcena is probably one of the funniest comics I know, and one of the hardest working comics I know. And he had a great career for a while, where he was on the Tonight Show every other week and doing this, and he was the next guy, and da-da-da-da-da. And then the career faded out a little bit.
And now his numbers.
Now all of a sudden, because of social media, he's selling out, doing big. He's bigger now than he ever was.
Yeah.
You never know in this business, right? You never know. And with Willie, rightfully deserved, Willie Barcena, if you've been living under a rock, you don't know who he is, watch him, because he's one of the funniest comics out there.
Another man who filmed his last special in El Paso.
There you go. Yeah, I know. I was supposed to direct it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, him and he was mad at me a little bit because I couldn't. But I was supposed to direct the special and I couldn't.
Oh.
But I planned everything. I got everything started, so it's kind of like I did. I should get some credit. But anyway, no, but it's just a matter of the one good thing about comics, unlike athletes, the older we get, the better we get. Athletes, they lose.
Just gonna say that.
Yeah, athletes lose their thing, man. They start losing it. We don't. We just get better. We get.
And I think because it's the life we live. Where I tell people, yes, I think there's young comedians that are funny, but I'm like, dude, you don't know what it's like. I've been through 2 divorces. I've raised 2 fucking kids that are now grown men.
Yeah,
and life just keeps hitting you where I'm like, dude, I got more stories than you at my age. That's all. And not saying that I'm funnier than I'm nicer.
No, we have more tools. We have more stories to say. We have more songs to sing, right? And it's like, And the thing is, we learn to do it better and better and better as you get older. Now, trust me, I've seen comics who have been doing comedy 20 years and they sound exactly like they did the first 5 years. I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Everybody's different, but yeah, I'm a better comedian now than I've ever been in my life. I can do more rooms now than I ever could. I could do more audiences than I could ever. I could, write jokes from the cuff like that. I'm a better comic than I ever was. And it's only because I have more experience in life. I have more experience doing it. I've been doing it because people go, hey, how many shows have you done? I'm like, you went today, like this week, like that was a weird question. How about I can't remember. All new comics, open micers. Yeah, man, this is my 6th show. I'm like, oh God, dude, I can't. I've done 6 shows in
I tell
2
people
days,
this
bro.
is the worst addiction that I've ever had.
Yeah,
I said I wish I was a heroin addict.
Yeah,
at
be
least
over
I
with
have
already.
marks.
You have something to show for it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and this will probably be my last question for you. I was talking to another comic on the way here, and he goes, one thing I want to know. He goes, some of my favorite comedians. You always hear how they went from an open mic to on Latin Kings of Comedy. He goes, they make it sound like it just happened overnight. And he
Not at all.
goes, so when you when you have Joey on, ask him how it went from open mic to Latin Kings of Comedy. He goes, a viewer like me, and he means other comics, we want to hear that story because we want to know how you got to there, because again, I'm still searching for my comedy special.
Well, look,
I'm still searching for my pinnacle.
The reason that people think it goes for like overnight successes is because they've never heard of somebody before, right? Then all of a sudden they hear about somebody. But that person who, most cases, that they never heard of has been doing tiny, crappy shows, driving on Greyhound buses, driving, 5 hours for $100, back home that same night, doing all, and that's the stuff we've done. And in between open mic to Latin Kings of Comedy, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of driving.
How many years is that?
There's a lot of borrowing money from your mom to take the boot off your car. There's how many years? It just depends. It took me probably,
for you, and what's probably
for me, probably took around 10 years before something
10
happened.
years.
Yeah.
And I tell people, what's funny is again, the first 10 years of my career, I was just like, I ain't hitting this plateau. I'm not hitting this goal. I'm not. And now I don't give a fuck. Like, I've learned to just enjoy the journey. I tell people,
Always
because I
enjoy
tell
the journey.
people, I go, I bet you Kevin Hart, who's selling out arenas, it's like, I got to do this again. And I go, that's not what I want to feel doing comedy. And I'm not saying he is, but I'm saying that I'm trying to enjoy the beauty.
Well, there's an innocence to it. There's an innocence to being new and enjoying the journey, because after you do a crappy set in the bar, then nobody knows who you are, and you had to struggle to talk over people. Then you go with your friends. You get in the car. You go to Denny's. You talk shit. You give each other tags. Hey, that joke you do with try this. Oh yeah, you should try this with that joke. And you go back and forth, and that stuff goes away when a lot of successes happen. Yeah. And I miss those days. And
so give me one good story and one bad story in those 10 years, from open mic to Latin Kings of Comedy. Like, give me one of your worst stories where there was maybe a bar fight or some shit. Okay, to the best where you're like, man,
both of these happened the same week.
Oh shit.
I go do a show in El Paso, Texas, and I open up for Gabe Kaplan, who was Welcome Back, Kotter.
Okay.
Now, for you younger people, you don't know, that's an old sitcom that Vinnie Barbarino was in. But so I meet someone who I considered a legend, right?
Yeah.
And I get to work with him, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to Welcome Back, Kotter, and the first day I opened for him, I go. I finish, I say goodnight, I go turn around, I grab the mic stand because it was behind me, and when I brought it back in front of me, I had a standing ovation. And everybody was standing up, and I was like, what do I didn't know what to do. I was brand new to comedy. I got a standing ovation. I'm like, all right, thanks. So I got off stage. I was so freaking happy. I went to the payphone at the comic strip in El Paso because it was a payphone then, and I called my mom collect because I didn't have an MCI card to call like I used to have. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you," you know. And that was it. Then later that week, I go to Arizona. I do a show for college, the U of A, and I almost get booed off stage. And it was the same week, same jokes, you know. It was just, and I remember like going, "Oh, this is like," it was the weirdest thing. It's like, it's like having sex with a porn star, really rocking her world, where she's like, "Oh my God, this is great," and then the next time you can't even get it up. You're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Just remember last time. Don't remember this time. Just remember last time." So yeah, both those things happened in the exact same week.
And that's when the comic strip was on the west side of El Paso,
Yeah,
right?
that's when it's on the west side.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dope. Is there anything you want to share with us before we call
No,
it?
man, you know, just honestly, look, life is short. This world is probably coming to an end soon. End soon. Be good to each other, man. Just, you know, just use a little bit of extra effort to be good to one another, be good to strangers, be good to people that care about you. My mom, I would talk to my mom once a week, right? Sometimes once every 2 weeks, because I love my mom. She's a little kooky. I love her and everything. And then for a second there, we thought we were going to lose her. I had to fly back to East Coast to all that. Now I speak to my mom on FaceTime every single day. Because I learned that woman who I love with all my heart could go like this.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, shit, I didn't talk to her for about 2 weeks. What kind of person am I? So now I FaceTime, even if it's just a minute. We FaceTime each other every day, and I can see it makes her happy. You know, for a woman who sacrificed so much for me, how am I not going to take a minute out of my day and just FaceTime her, right? So I do that. So little things like that. Just make little changes. Little changes leads to big things. And that happens with careers, with relationships, with goals, with learning. Little steps, man. It just takes little steps. I hate reading, but you know what? Read 1 page a day of a book that's important, right?
Yeah.
To learn how to direct, or learn how to be nice, or whatever, a religion, whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
Read 1 page a day. Before you know it, you're reading 4 pages. You're reading 2 pages. But now you're moving forward. Always move forward. So that's my advice for people. And then, you know, check out my Instagram, Joey Medina, at Joey Medina Comic. My Facebook is Joey Medina Comic as well.
And I'll have all that listed on the comment
Yeah. So we're
section
good.
of everything. So thank you again, man. I appreciate
Thanks for
you
having me,
having
brother. I know we've tried, our signals have been crossed for a while,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
finally got it done. So this is good.
And again, I will say this is the one comic that when I text you, you text back. Like, you haven't ghosted me, so I appreciate you, man.
Because I'm not an asshole like other guys are.
We're not mentioning any names.
Main man, Big James. Comedian, Big James. Get up on him.
In my opinion, podcast. My opinion, podcast. All nine niggas. All